Okay, here we go. Well, thank you. And thank you to Elder Gary Sue for being with us and smudging the room. I want to acknowledge we're on the traditional lands of Mississauga New Credit. It's important to do that. And I want to introduce myself. I'm Irwin Elman. I'm the Provincial Advocate for Children and Youth. And do you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Tristen Schneider. I'm from Monague First Nation. My Ojibwe name is Anjay Benabikwe.
And I'm Shane Monague from Beausoleil First Nation. My Nishnah Bemwin name is Yankanena Dishnikas.
Hello, and I'm Samantha Crowe from Lake Howland First Nations. I'm also Wapshki Benese Kwe. Thank you.
And in the audience, I want to acknowledge Reina, who's also a youth advisor for this report that we're releasing today. I want to say I'll be talking hopefully very little. I want to turn the floor and the mics over to the young people who are with me. But I want to give some context to the report we're releasing today. Let me say I'm proud and honored and privileged to sit and stand with the young people here with us today, who are standing with young people who were part of the report that we're releasing today, who are standing with First Nations young people across the province and really across the country. It's a powerful report that you have produced. I'm speaking to the young people with me. It comes out of a process that began in 2012. As the provincial advocate, I realized that the rights that come so easily to some children in the province are so hard fought, if won at all, by First Nations children in the province. The gap between what many First Nations have in terms of their rights, their ability to thrive and fulfill their full potential, the gap is huge between them and children in many other parts of the province. It's not okay. And our office began a process of bringing 100 to 200 First Nations young people together in 2012 around what we call the Feathers of Hope Forum, and they came together, they talked together about what they were confronted with, and then they decided and met with decision makers at the end of a 3 or 4 day forum. And after that, they wrote a report which they called Feathers of Hope, and it was an action plan for Ontario to close the gap between the rights of many children and the rights of First Nations children in the province. When Justice Yakabuchi was doing his own report on the jury system and the involvement of Aboriginal Ontarians, he came to us as an office and said, would you consider, if I made that recommendation, a forum on justice and juries so that First Nations young people would be able to comment on what they thought needed to change in the justice system? We were again honored, and we said, well, we would consider that if you made the recommendation. He did, and we, with the support of the Ministry of Attorney General and the Dubwaywen Committee, co-chaired by Grand Chief Alvin Fiddler from Nan, with their support, we created a forum and brought together 150 First Nations young people to talk about the justice and jury system. And then from there, young people who were involved in that forum wrote a report, which we're releasing today. It's important to know that that report was written really by them. The process involved two co-authors. One was Laura Arndt, who's in Ottawa releasing the report today on Parliament Hill, and Dr. Fred Matthews, who worked hard at trying to meet with 9 young people who were advisors to the process and co-writers and our youth amplifiers to get it right, to really reflect in that report what was said by young people. And those young people, as part of the writing process, often wanted to know more about the system that they were talking about and that we were considering. So we had others like the Aboriginal Legal Services of Ontario do workshops for the young people who were writing this report, and they took what information they got and combined it with what they heard and what they said at the forum on justice and juries, and created this amazing report which you have before you. I could say that one of the things that I took from meeting with young people around this, from listening to young people, was that they want to be heard, that they want to be listened to. That's a theme in that report, and that listening to builds trust. So without any more comment, I want to invite you to read the report, and today to listen to the young people beside me who are going to tell you a little bit about what's in it. So over to you, Sam.
Thank you, Irwin. So once again, my name is Samantha Crowe, and I am from Lake Halland First Nations, and I'm a youth amplifier with the Provincial Advocate's Office. Young Aboriginal people say that they feel the direct impact of the justice system on their lives, their families, and their communities. Out of the 150 young people who attended Feathers of Hope, almost all of them has said that either they experienced themselves or they have witnessed firsthand racism directed towards them or their family members from the justice system. And despite only being 4% of the national population, Aboriginal women represent 36% and Aboriginal men represent 25% of the population within territorial and provincial jails. We also have an estimated 1,200 Aboriginal women and children who have been murdered or are missing. That is an injustice and a tragedy that we really need justice to be delivered for. For far too long, young people feel that they have been on the sidelines of important decisions for their lives and for their futures who are being made by everyone else around them. They feel caught in a vicious cycle of hopelessness and despair. But we want to change that. We want to make things better. Over the course of the 3 days at Feathers of Hope Justice and Juries Forum, we talked openly about our experiences of the justice system within our communities. We talked about the lack of representation of Aboriginal people on juries, but we also discussed the overall justice system and really how it's affecting us and impacting our lives in a negative way. And we can't have positive experience or more participation on juries without looking at creating sustainable solutions for the overall justice system. Thank you.
My name is Shane Monague. I'm from Christian Island, Beausoleil First Nation, and I'm a member of the Feathers of Hope Youth Advisory Committee. So, being a participant at the forum in November 2014, it was evident that many of us felt extremely disconnected from the justice system. Our values and beliefs are rooted in healing and restoration, whereas the Canadian justice system feels rooted in punishment and blame. A lot of us don't even know enough about the justice system or how it works to understand our rights, or even to how to advocate for within ourselves while in the system. Even though the consequences are so high, without this knowledge, many of us are not willing to participate in juries or seek a career within the justice system. Life-changing decisions are too often made for us without anyone explaining our rights, or even the legal terms and processes behind them. Often we feel pressured to say we understand what is happening when we don't. Our communities urgently need programs to educate us behind these issues and behind the justice system. This information should be easily available for community members within the band office or schools or the health center or something like that. Collectively, we believe that discrimination, racism, and stereotypes about our people show up in the jury process because they are a part of the beliefs and the unconscious thinking of mainstream Canadian society. We believe that many professionals, especially judges, police officers, and lawyers, lack an understanding of where we come from and what we've been through, especially with the intergenerational trauma left to us by the residential schools. This just leads to negative stereotypes and discrimination. So on policing, police practices are some of the most immediate and visible signs of the justice system's failure to effectively serve Aboriginal communities. Police are often a young person's first point of contact with the justice system, whether it be running into a police officer on the street or in the mall or whatever. You do encounter them. And it's because of this reality, those officers have that responsibility to make a positive relationship with the people they're protecting. But all too often, we fear police, and we feel intimidated by them. If we knew our rights, many of these negative interactions with police could be prevented. For example, most of us have no idea that an officer needs our permission to search anyone that's not under arrest. Too often, police stereotype us, and it's almost never in a good way. If the police see an Aboriginal person stumbling down the road, they'll most likely assume that they're drunk or on illegal drugs, rather than thinking, maybe the person needs help. We also believe the services are not provided at the same level in Aboriginal communities compared to the rest of the country. There are Aboriginal police officers who understand our communities, who take the time to really get to know the people, but there are far too few, and they're spread far too thin. And often, due to the lack of people or bodies, take an unreasonable amount of time to respond to calls. This only adds to our sense of fear and our insecurities with the justice system. Thank you.
Ani, Bojo, Sego. Hello. My name is Tristen Schneider. I am from Shawanaga First Nation Ojibwe territory. My Ojibwe name is Anje Benebikwe. So a few words on the jury process. Many Aboriginal people are surprised and uncomfortable to learn that jury duty is mandatory considering our cultural tradition of not judging others. Serving on a jury can cause financial and emotional hardship to an Aboriginal person, especially where jurors have to travel far away from the remote or fly-in community and serve in a long trial or inquest. The low level of compensation paid to jurors creates a real barrier to participation, especially for people supporting families. Too often, the courts don't seem to understand this. Language is another major issue. People living in remote communities or reserves often do not speak French or English as their first language. This is especially true for the elders. They may not understand a jury summons. So as for Gladue, many of us were encouraged to learn about the Gladue principle, which requires the courts to further alternate sentencing that could help Aboriginal people avoid further contact with the law. But to request a Gladue court, we need to know what it exists. We need better education of our rights and of our process of the courts. We urge the Ministry of the Attorney General to ensure the Gladue courts are available in courthouses across Ontario, and that individuals who identify as Aboriginal who are charged with an offence have access to a Gladue court if they wish. This is an important change to ensure that courts consider Canada's harmful historical treatment against Aboriginal peoples for judges to decide a sentence or bail that may be better at helping an individual to avoid further contact with the law. In closing, transformative change is needed to build a trust is needed to build trust in the justice system and put an end to discrimination so that we can all deliver justice for all. Aboriginal youth had 38 recommendations to renew the justice system in order to build trust and make the system more supportive and inclusive for Aboriginal people. We urge the federal and provincial government, members of the police, legal communities, elders, and others to read our report and partner with us to take the necessary steps towards change. I want to thank the young people who shared their stories and ideas at the forum. I also want to thank Irwin Elman, the Ontario's Provincial Advocate for Children and Youth, for giving us hope and a forum to voice our ideas. Miigwech.
Thank you, Tristen. Thank you for that kind words. It's my privilege, as I said, to be with you and all of you, to be here. I want to just add, for me, there are 38 recommendations, and all of them are steps that the provincial government or federal government can take immediately. Not all of them cost a lot of money, but I think the real change possibility, the opportunity in all of those recommendations are the manner in which First Nations young people are engaged to be part of them. So whether it's around recommendations about further training to policing, whether it's around recommendations to better support Aboriginal jurors in the province, whether it's around training of lawyers and judges around Gladue or around legacy issues. First Nations young people, in my mind, are ready to be involved and engaged. And for me, the governments, federal government and provincial government, need to do things like fund youth councils, the ones here, with appropriately, so that there are resources there so young people can be engaged. They need to take steps of engaging First Nations young people in any policy decision that affects them. They need to take steps in ensuring that services in the justice system and beyond that involve First Nations young people, involve them in planning those services so that they're appropriate. And in those steps to engage young people, we will find change. We will build hope. It's simple in some ways and difficult in others. But that's the step we need to take in this province to transform our justice system, but also to transform our province. And I think be a beacon of hope for many in the country. Thank you for being here. We can take questions if there are any.
What do you feel are the main difficulties, the main challenges to reform the system or to change the system?
Do you guys want to answer that? Go ahead.
So could you just repeat the question there?
What do you think is the main challenge to make that reform, to change the system or to apply those recommendations?
I say for myself that I think our biggest challenge is people to listen and, having those people that are going to have our backs, especially for First Nations youth of today and, in our future generations. We need to have those people that are going to be supportive for the First Nations youth that are struggling in the North and the South. And it's important that, we have people that are willing to listen and take charge of our recommendations and, put them forth.
I think for me, I think the justice system and a lot of the laws are really rooted in racism and oppression towards our people. And so it's not going to take a day or a month to get these decisions and get these recommendations to be met within our communities, but it's building those relationships and those partnerships with people all across the province and our nation in order to have that solutions, in order to have those healthy communities for everyone to live in, to have a system where we can have more positive experiences rather than negative experiences, because right now young people only see the justice system as a negative impact in their life rather than something that they can achieve to or want to be part of in a positive way. So as long as we're, like Tristen said, we're listening to each other, we're building those connections, we're making those relationships, then we can go as far as we want to go. Thanks.
For me personally, I think it might be a matter of shifting consciousness almost, getting out of that same colonial way of thinking, and just really opening up and accepting. Our people are really spiritually aware or something like that. But you have to be open and accepting and understanding and be aware that, things are full circle and not straight and linear like colonial way of thinking implies.
For somebody like me, sitting here, I think it's up to people like me, who look like me, who have backgrounds like me, to start by listening. And it's a struggle because it means unlearning things. It means changing our culture. But that starts with listening. And I think it moves towards a dialogue. And I think that, for me, I look back at the final report of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and that put us on a path with its recommendations to find a way to reconcile. And that means open, difficult listening by all Canadians. And just being with the young people who are with us here today and at the forums and traveling to communities, the hope for me, for the country, and I mean that for all of us, is in those young people who have the strength and courage given the opportunity to speak. And if we listen, it will transform all of us, not just them. It's not about just, of course it is, making sure they have what they need and have the rights that are due to them. But when that happens, it transforms the whole country. I remember Justice Sinclair saying something to that effect, and I have 2 little kids at home, that he thinks we should not leave this problem of reconciliation, this task of reconciliation, to our children, that we need to do this now so that our children don't need to live in a country that is unreconciled, that is broken in some ways, that is not healed. And what hope exists in this panel or this report exists for all of us, not just First Nations children.
Do you feel people are willing to hear now? Do you think there's that willingness, that openness now that we didn't have before?
I'm going to ask you guys. It's important what you feel too.
I think it's difficult to say. It definitely varies by person. I think generally there's the idea or the image that we are moving towards that more openness, more of a relationship building. But sometimes when you're in the community, it does not feel like that at all. And so it's trying to find a balance between feeling safe in your community, but also feeling safe within your law and within your justice system. So that's what we're trying to work towards.
And recently there is like a movement of togetherness building, but it's more of a matter of keeping that momentum going and instead of letting it die down. Yeah, thank you.
For myself, well, what I've been seeing with our Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, he's done a lot within what Stephen Harper has done. So I do see that relationship is it's growing, but we're being very optimistic, many people today are more open as to what Sam has said. A lot of people are coming open-minded, but there's still that education gap. We have to educate the Canadian public before we can move forward, and I think I see a good future ahead.
I think that what I see is strong leadership, so saying the right things at the federal government level, even at provincial government level, certainly in Ontario, and that I see strong leadership in the province and in First Nations organizations. I'm thinking about Grand Chief Fiddler who from Anishinaabe Nation, who's going to testify tomorrow at an inquest into the 7 deaths in Thunder Bay, and how strong he is, yet compassionate and caring, and a willingness to listen to young people. And Chief Day and other chiefs who are also ready to engage and listen to young people, but also stand strong. So that, to me, is hopeful. The but is that when we've gotten to that stage, now there's the real hard work to do. You know, the listening and dialogue is a task. It's not just that we said, oh, I'm going to listen. We have to really listen and be challenged when we listen, and then change behaviors. And that is a task which I'm hopeful for. But, you know, and I don't know if you want to speak to this and tell me if I'm right or wrong, but a lot of young people I meet are almost fearful to hope because we've heard things before and been let down as a country, and I think First Nations young people let down before. So while it's hopeful, it's almost frightening and takes courage to be hopeful, I think, if you're a First Nations young person.
Do you feel at the provincial level there is a willingness to change? I know Premier Wynne has done a lot of announcements about helping, for example, Aboriginal women that are facing violence. Do you feel that there is that the first fight is there, let's say, or do you aim more towards Ottawa right now?
I mean, ideally, if we could have better relationships and better experiences all over the nation, that'd be great. I don't know. I think it starts within our communities, but it's also within our laws. So it's trying to work between having people in both areas to work on it. So that's why we have our launch within Toronto and within Ottawa, so that we're kind of tackling things both provincially but also federally, because as Aboriginal people, we're a federal issue. We're seen as the responsibility of the nation rather than just the province. So I guess within the province I see there's progress, but I would like to see progress overall within the nation.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, well, I'd like to thank you for coming and for people for watching and on live stream. And thank again the young people who are with me, and Ryan and Reina who are in the audience, who also were helpful in making this report happen. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
You guys.